20, Mara Ellison thought her mother's charity gala would finally be the night her family stopped comparing her with her younger sister. But instead, beneath chandeliers inside the family's historic hotel, her mother lifted a champagne glass and announced that Vivian had the charm to carry the family name, while Mara had the brains to stay useful behind a desk, sending a wave of uncomfortable laughter through a room filled with relatives, business partners, and people who had known her since childhood. Mara stood beside a display honoring the family's success, listening as her mother praised Vivian's beauty, confidence, and social connections while barely acknowledging Mara's scholarship, her years of work, and the university acceptance letter folded inside her handbag. And when her father quietly whispered, "Don't make a scene," Mara realized that everyone expected her to swallow the humiliation so the family photograph could remain perfect. Instead of arguing, Mara walked upstairs to her childhood bedroom, opened the small metal box where she kept her savings, counted $428, and stared at the photograph of herself and Vivian taken years earlier before placing the photograph face down and making a decision that frightened her more than staying ever had. She packed 2 changes of clothes, her identification, a battered laptop, and the scholarship letter, left the family key on her mother's desk, and boarded a late-night train from Savannah, Georgia, to Richmond, Virginia, carrying no revenge plan and no certainty except the belief that if she remained in that house, she would eventually become whatever version of herself her mother had invented. Richmond did not welcome her with dramatic opportunities, and for nearly 3 weeks Mara slept in a cramped rented room above a bakery, worked early mornings washing dishes, and spent afternoons attending classes at a community college while calculating whether she could afford another week of rent. Her turning point came when a retired archivist named Eleanor Price noticed Mara carefully correcting a mislabeled box of historical documents at the college library and offered her temporary work organizing damaged records, telling her, "You have the patience for details most people never notice," a sentence that stayed with Mara because nobody in her family had ever praised the very quality they once used to insult her. Over the next several years, Mara became exceptionally skilled at tracing financial records, reconstructing missing paperwork, identifying altered documents, and discovering inconsistencies hidden inside complicated business transactions, eventually earning certifications in compliance and forensic accounting while building a quiet life far away from the people who had taught her that love depended on performance. She became close friends with Jonah Mercer, a patient investigative journalist who admired her ability to remain calm when everyone else became emotional. And although Mara told him about the humiliation at the gala, she refused to describe her family as villains because she had learned that healing did not require turning every painful memory into a public war. 8 years after she left home, Mara received an unexpected email from a regional bank requesting an independent records consultant for a complicated investigation involving a chain of boutique hotels that had suddenly defaulted on several large loans. And she nearly declined when she discovered that the company belonged to a holding group connected to her parents. The documents revealed something far more disturbing than a failing business, because several financing agreements contained a dormant trust account established in Mara's name shortly after she had disappeared from Georgia. And although she had never authorized the account, money had been repeatedly transferred through it to cover company expenses, property taxes, and private purchases. Mara immediately removed herself from the investigation because of the family connection, but she legally obtained her own financial records and discovered that someone had been using her identity for years to create the appearance of a financially responsible beneficiary, making her name valuable to lenders who believed she had approved the arrangements. One document carried a signature that looked convincing from a distance, but collapsed under examination, and Mara recognized a peculiar flourish at the end that her mother had once copied from an old school form, causing her stomach to tighten as she realized the family had not simply forgotten her after she left. They had continued using the daughter they claimed was unstable because they believed distance meant she could never challenge them. Mara hired an attorney, froze her accounts, notified the institutions involved, and began preserving every piece of evidence instead of confronting her parents, because she understood that emotional accusations could be dismissed while dated documents, transaction histories, and verified signatures could not. Then Vivian called after nearly a decade of silence, crying that their father was sick and the family hotel business was in danger, before asking Mara to sign a simple confirmation letter, stating that she had always known about the financial arrangements. And when Mara calmly asked, "If it was innocent, why do you need my signature now?" Vivian went completely silent. 6 months later, an invitation arrived announcing Vivian's engagement to Daniel Cross, a respected financial advisor whose family had invested heavily in the hotel company, and the ceremony was scheduled to take place at the same restored estate where Mara's humiliation had begun years earlier. Mara initially planned to stay away, but her attorney explained that the wedding payments appeared connected to disputed accounts, and after reviewing the evidence, Mara realized the event was not merely a celebration, but potentially the final transaction in a financial scheme built around her stolen identity. So she accepted the invitation and decided to attend without revealing what she knew. On the wedding morning, Mara entered the estate wearing a simple navy dress and carrying a slim document case, while her mother greeted her with a smile that looked warm from across the room, but became cold the moment they stood alone, whispering, "You always did know how to arrive when everyone was watching." Mara answered, "I learned from the best." And when Vivian later hugged her for the photographers and quietly begged her not to ruin the day, Mara replied, "I didn't come to ruin anything, Vivian. I came because I finally stopped protecting people from consequences they created themselves." Before the ceremony, Daniel discovered that the account funding several major wedding expenses had been frozen by the bank, and when he traced the financial records, he found Mara's name attached to the disputed authorization documents. He found her in a quiet corridor and asked, "Did you approve any of this?" And Mara showed him only the evidence she was legally permitted to share, including her identity theft report and the unsigned statement her family had tried to pressure her into signing, after which Daniel walked into the bridal room and asked Vivian why she had never told him that the money supporting their wedding was connected to a woman whose identity had allegedly been used without permission. Vivian broke down and admitted that her mother had told her everything would be fixed after the wedding, while Mara's father finally confessed that he had known about several questionable documents, but convinced himself that keeping the hotel alive was more important than confronting his wife. Daniel ended the ceremony before it began, not because Mara demanded it, but because he realized the woman he planned to marry had knowingly hidden information that could affect their financial future. And when Mara's mother accused her of destroying another family celebration, Mara simply said, "I didn't destroy your reputation. I stopped helping you disguise it." Investigation continued for months, uncovering additional unauthorized accounts, manipulated corporate records, and financial obligations that had been hidden behind layers of family companies. And although Mara never celebrated her mother's downfall, she refused every offer to withdraw her complaint in exchange for money or a private apology, because she knew that silence had already cost her too many years. Her father cooperated with investigators and eventually admitted that his greatest mistake was not signing one particular document, but repeatedly choosing peace inside his marriage over fairness toward his daughter, while Vivian began rebuilding her life separately, and for the first time, openly admitted that being treated as the perfect daughter had made her afraid to question the person controlling the family. 2 years later, Mara married Jonah in a small garden ceremony attended by Eleanor, a few close friends, and people who knew her because of who she had become rather than who her family once claimed she was. And when the officiant asked whether she wished to change her surname, she smiled and said she wanted to keep the name she had carried through every difficult chapter. She later established a small emergency scholarship called the $428 Fund, inspired by the amount she had carried onto that train years earlier. And every year it helped students facing sudden housing, transportation, or educational expenses, because Mara wanted someone else standing at a difficult crossroads to receive the opportunity she once had to create a life beyond the walls that told her she was never enough. Mara eventually understood that her greatest victory was not watching her mother lose control, Vivian lose a wedding, or the family business collapse under the weight of its own dishonesty. Because none of those things could give back the years she had spent believing that being compared meant being loved less. Her real victory was learning that she did not need permission to value herself, that boundaries were not acts of cruelty, and that walking away from people who demanded her silence was not the same as abandoning a family. Because sometimes the person everyone calls difficult is simply the first person brave enough to stop pretending that everything is normal. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.